Regressions. How do you protect your projects from them? I hope today to add few tricks to your arsenal. Hi, I'm Oleksii, head of iOS team at BikeMap. It's an Austrian company which creates apps and services for cyclists. We help people all around the world to find safe and enjoyable ways. And we also provide navigation to follow them. And as any company with more 500,000 monthly active users, except for Bear, we collect analytics. So for every meaningful action of our users in the app, we sending anonymous events to some of analytics providers. And then our product and growth team analyze them to improve the product. What are regressions? It's unintended loss of functionality after changes. Which kind of changes? It could be long anticipated refactoring, could be nice shiny feature, or update of third-party dependency to the latest version. And I know cute German word which very well characterize effect, Verschlimmbesserung. It's when intent to improve actually makes things worse. And it's not so nice, and to reflect my association with the effect, I draw some funny doodle. Beware of regressions. And what about regressions of analytics? Oh, those are one of the nasty kind. I will tell you why. First, they're sneaky. When it happens, app visually looks as usual. Core functionality works. No users complain, no crash reports. And because of this, they tend to stay in the app for quite some time. And often you only realize that something has regressed after half a year. And it's too late. If you issue hotfix, it will not solve the issue. You need to wait for another half a year to gather those data. Yeah, not ideal. How do we usually fight regressions? Well, it's about test and more test and maybe check manually. Let's find out if one of those approaches will help us to fight analytics regressions. XCUITest, you know, they're super useful for testing business logic and general flows. And they atomic by their nature. So they are very good to ensure that your analytics framework works as expected using one mock event. You could go extra mile and even try to cover all events with unit tests, but still you cannot check sequences of events, and it's often very important to know which event happens after another. So it does not fully fit. XCUITests are great in checking user interactions, also in sequences, but normally they don't have access to business logic, so we can't use them right away. And manual testing, trust me, you don't want to go this way. Although most of analytics providers allow you to check if certain event is triggered in console, it's tedious work, and it could not be automated, and therefore, yeah, strong no. What alternatives do we have? Well, there is methodology. It's not directly supported by Apple frameworks, but it's super universal. You can apply it to any situation when you can create baseline set of state and then compare it later with future iterations. And we might be able to use it to test analytics regressions. Let's put together some requirements. What do we want? First, we would like to ensure that all specified events are triggered for a specific set of actions. Second, we would like to ensure that those events have names and parameters which we expect. And at the end, we would like to ensure that no extra events triggered, which could be also wrong scenario. And what if we combine together XCUITest for running set of interactions and snapshot test for events which happen during those interactions? So we run XCUITest with defined set of actions. We gather all triggered events and save them, some persistent storage. And then next time when we run test, we compare our snapshot to newly generated test. Sounds doable. The biggest challenge is this small plus in between. And why? Because by nature, XCUITest, it's two apps running in parallel. One is test app and another is main app. And test app guides the main app using accessibility elements, reading accessibility labels, and interacting with accessibility elements. Let's explore what communication methods do we have between them. First, let's take a look on the way to communicate from XCUITest to the main app. We could set environment variables and launch arguments. It's rock solid, always works, but only happens on the start of the test. We could read accessibility identifiers and invoke actions of OI elements, which is already quite something, it's direct communication. And we could write and read from clipboard or passport. On the other way, from the main app, we could change accessibility identifiers in real time and also write and read from clipboard, but last one has quite some pitfalls. I'm going to return to them later. All right, let's try to imagine a high-level flow. First, we start XCUITest, and it initiates main app passing set of parameters. We would like to indicate that we're running XCUITest, that certain test is running, and for the creating snapshot, we passing specific flag indicating, hey, please don't compare events, just store them. On receiving those launcher arguments, main app starts to perform, and it gathers all triggered events. And very important thing, it shows a very specific Y element which we will use to communicate between both parts. XCUITest, meanwhile, runs all specified set of actions like normal XCUITest. It completes this set of actions and then triggers action on this special Y element, which invokes business logic of the app, which stores all recorded events to JSON file and changes accessibility label of this element back to indicate to test app that core or main app is done with their part of story. And then test just expect those events to be copied somewhere in the project. Let's check how we're going to run next test when we already have snapshot. We have the flow, which is similar, but not the same. The difference is that we don't passing flag to indicate that we're recording, and instead, when action on this special element is invoked, we instead compare gathered events with events from snapshot and change accessibility label with special message which indicates either success or the reason of failure. And based on this change, our app, our test will pass or fail. All right, let's get our hands dirty and face some engineering challenges. So what do we have here? It's gathering of all events. Its definition of analytic event, we would like to have it on one hand strict enough to ensure that we don't do any stupid typos in event parameters or name. On the other hand, we would like to proceed all events in a very unified way. And the last part is creating snapshot. How do we approach gathering of all events? It's relatively simple. We create dependency, which is analytics manager, and pass it to business logic, which could invoke events. And it has array of analytics providers. For example, two of them might be normal analytics providers, like telemetry deck or Firebase, and we could inject any number of special providers, which will actually intercept all events which are happening inside the app. How it looks in the code. We have very simple analytics service protocol. We can advance it, but in general, each provider has to be somehow initialized, and it's supposed to track some general analytics event. And we have this analytics manager. You see here array of services, and for each service in it we call initialization. But this simple approach already gives us flexibility. Depending on launch parameters passed to the app, we could dynamically change set of services. For example, it doesn't make sense to pollute analytics when running tests, so we exclude real providers. And other way around, when we're running tests, and other way around, when we're running production, we don't actually need testing provider. And then last method, it's a publishing pattern. We every event propagate to all available providers. Let's go to definition of analytics event. We have very simple protocol, which again has to be super flexible because we don't know how many parameters each event will have and how many of them are optional types and so on. We only know that each event will probably have name. And on the right side, it's example of one event. You see that it's a structure, and we will create structure for each event to ensure that we're not messing things up. It has a name and also parameter which is passed to initializer as enumerator, also to ensure that we don't do some stupid typo in screen name. How storing events in JSON in unified way will look like. First, we have this high-level structure. All good. We gather those structures in array. How are we supposed to save them in JSON? They all have different types, although they come from the protocol. We introduce intermediate structure, which is kind of type erased. It's universal for all events. Here, we don't guard any types. It's really intermediate tool which should not be used outside of event testing. But this intermediate thing is equitable, so it's super easy to compare with snapshot without going into details of event types. And yeah, it's super easy to create JSON from it. And also pay attention that as bonus, parameter names in this JSON will fully correlate with our high-level business structure definition of event. So we don't need to introduce any mappings which also include probability of their error. Let's go through event lifecycle step by step. First, we creating this event structure. Then, at some place in the app when it makes sense, we invoking this dependency track event with this event. Track event is in a row redirected to our testing provider, where we adding it to array of events. Then I already described the structure. To create it, we need a bit of magic, because how are we going to type erase our event structures? Well, we will have special method which just dump all parameters into dictionary string. And then it's super easy to create intermediate event structure using those data. Then we use JSON encoder to combine this structure to string and save it to the JSON file. Let's look on the code. How do we normalize event parameters? Here we're using small trick. It's a mirror functionality which is part of reflection framework of the Swift. What it does, it for any instance type returns internal structure of this type. It's what we need for type erasing, because we don't care how many parameters each structure has. We just get mirror children and iterate through them. Of course, excluding event name because it's not a parameter. And then we, on checking snapshot, checking equality of our snapshot events and some set of gathered events. How we do this? For both arrays, we looking for the pair, and if we find one, we eliminate it from both arrays, passed. If some event is missing from test events, from freely gathered events, then it's regressed, it's missing, it's failing. If event has the same name but different parameters, it's also a failure. Here we have pair, all good, passes, and then at the end of iteration, if gathered events array still have one event, it means that something unexpected happened and some extra event has been triggered. Let's quickly look in the code. It's not rocket science, two loops, one inside another. We checking events. Nice element here that we just checking for equality, beautiful. And second part of array is combining error messages if something went wrong. All right, now let's put all parts in action. I have built a demo app, and I will share a link to GitHub where you can play with it. What it does, it shows list of attractions. User could type on one attraction to see details and could add it to favorites list. And each of those actions supposed to emit a specific event, indicating that something happened. And I'm going to show how it works. Let me switch to Xcode. First, we just running the app to ensure that functionality per se working. We have list of attractions, and yeah, how we expect, we could see details, add to favorites, all good. I have prepared XCUITest, which follows this list of actions. Let's run this XCUITest, see how it goes. You see this additional app was created to guide main app. They've started. You see the special Y element in the top red. And test successfully failed. Why? Let's take a look why. Obviously, because we haven't created snapshot, so it has nothing to compare and gives us clear message, hey, please do screenshot first. For this, we manually toggle parameter, which will be passed to main app and make it aware that we would like to just record events, no check required. So I expect this time text will succeed. Pay attention to this dialog. I will come to this later. Yeah, it worked out. Great. All right, let's quickly take a look on created snapshot. A JSON file is expected, and we have our event there. All right, good. We have something to work with. Now we can toggle the flag again and run the test. And now, fingers crossed, we expect it to pass because we have snapshot, we have our events. Let's see. Yeah, it worked. Very good. All right, it's improvement time. Why we just show bottom sheet with description when we can show map and present location of the POI? I changed code to use full screen implementation, and let's run our test again. And maybe, if you paid attention, you have already seen the doom we call upon us. So yeah, beautiful, full screen map, and test failed. Why? Well, because I was too reckless and just removed code which actually contained the call to emit show POI description, so it's now missing. But we have direct idea how to fix it. We have this description here, and we'll apply this fix calling track event on dependency, and we'll run the test again. This time, although we changed appearance, we would expect to still have the same set of events. Yay, it worked. Fantastic. And as you can imagine, we can continue. For example, we would like to track additional screen opening, because now we're opening separate screen. And, well, you educated enough to guess what's going to happen. We have extra event, which is not expected. It's not part of the snapshot. So test going to fail. But we will check error message, how it looks like. Yeah, it's descriptive enough, saying that this new screen event was not actually expecting. All good. Let's return to the presentation. So, I quickly remind what events happened. And I promise you to explain this weird dialog and explain why we don't use plasterboard. First reason is that it's used for other operations as well. We could develop some special protocol for text messages in plasterboard, but there are chance that they could be overwritten if fellow developer has no idea that we communicating with XCUITest via plasterboard could cause problems and introduce some flakiness. But second, even more important reason, this dialog that you have seen. The problem here is that when this dialog appears for the main app, XCUITest easily dismiss it with interruption monitor. But when it happens other way around, when main app tries to pass something to the test app, obviously test app could not dismiss it because it would do this for itself. It's not allowed. And therefore, it's manual action. And I find it fine if we do this once when creating snapshot, all good. It anyway conscious operation. But on CI, it would not work. Therefore, no plasterboard. And I would like to address a few other things. First, it's stability of XCUITest, which is kind of infamous. And I hear a lot from other people, why don't even bother with this thing because it breaks. Well, I don't have scientific data, but I have my gut feeling gathered after 6 years of using this technology. So I would agree, XCUITest have bugs, definitely, especially in areas of text input or assessing accessibility elements of Swift UI views integrated into UIKit here. There are some things, but the good thing is that they're usually predictable. They either work or not. In my case, it rarely causes flakiness. So it sometimes works, sometimes not. No, you know in advance that, oh, there is a bug, we have to find workaround. Second big part, asynchronous task. All network calls, all data processing make tests flaky, but we just learned that we could pass parameter, make main app aware that we're running XCUITest, and why don't return mock data for network calls? It would make tests faster, more reliable, or instead of adding pauses and hoping for the best that network calls succeed in 5 seconds, wait till activity indicator is dismissed or certain content appears. You can wait either 3 seconds or 5 seconds, but it's going to be there. And from my experience, biggest part of all XCUITest failures connected with real issues inside the app. They're just not fully visible. It could be some stray pop-up appearing when not expecting, or some race condition which causes some operation to fail. And I really encourage you, every time when white tests fail, before blaming buggy white test, take a deep look to the root cause of the problem, and it makes your app better in the end. And I have additional pro tip. Another concern that tests are too slow, especially white tests. If you're running a big set of them, well, why not speed them up? There's a small trick which increase animation in your app 100 times. So it's basically instant. And advantage is visible. Their minutes save time. The disadvantage is that it increases probability of race conditions which otherwise are hidden by animation duration. So choose wisely. No, I'm just kidding. Please be bold, enable this speed up, and use this to eliminate race conditions inside your app. Yeah, it is the way to go. And if you're still concerned with time of the test, there is interesting methodology called selective testing. And Mike Gerasimenko had very nice talk about it. And he is attending this conference. So if you would like to know details how to decrease test duration 3 times, go talk to him. And conclusion. I hope I convinced you today that snapshot testing is powerful and reversal technique. I just would like to emphasize that it works. In our case, for analytics event, you can use it for OI, you can use it for network requests, everywhere. There are differently ways to communicate between OI test and main app. Sometimes you have to be creative, but it works. Analytics events could be defined in the way that they're strict enough to avoid some stupid type errors, but also cover all case of events. And regressions are unavoidable. It's part of the life, but now we better know how to tame them and keep under control, like this. And thank you very much for watching. I have uploaded a demo app on GitHub, so if you want, please go there, play with events, add events, remove events, see how it fails, how it succeeds. And below there, my contacts, how you can reach me.
All right. We have time for questions. I was not used anymore. And there's a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions.
All right, I have 2 questions. First one is, how do you approach A/B testing, especially on the same flows where like the A/B tests have different outcomes? And the second one is, who on your teams is responsible to create the snapshots, because it takes time.
Good question regarding A/B test. We usually stick to baseline, because every time when you're running A/B test, there's baseline and hypothesis. And not all hypotheses are proved right. And baseline is current state of things. And it's cheaper in terms of developer time to just align with baseline. If we going to adopt alternative solution, then we will cover it with OI test. And second answer, we are a small team, so sometimes I do it myself, sometimes my colleagues, but from our experience, it's not a lot of hassle. You have seen, I have done this during presentation, and it took me like half a minute, and usually you cover new functionality with OI test once per month, maybe. So from our perspective, it makes sense.
All right, I saw a question somewhere here. Yeah, okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I actually have 2 questions, if you don't mind. So the first one is, have you had the case of you having to send an event which doesn't go through all of the vendors, and how you handle that architecturally? And the second question I had was, because I fought with the same scenario, and we were trying to employ an HTTP server communication between the client app and the test app, or an IPC server. You showed the example with the pasteboard. Have you considered going with the server approach? Thanks.
So, answer for the first question. How to put it? You have seen in the protocol of events, we could have calculated properties which are not part of the mirroring. And therefore, you can add specific flags for the text, for each test, indicating that it's either not included in testing flow completely, or make it provider dependent. So it's versatile enough, and because of this calculated property, it's not part of the mirroring, and therefore you don't affect your snapshot at all. And regarding second question, no, we haven't tried this thing. We mostly stick with user interactions and analytics testing.
Thanks.
We have a question in the back.
Yeah. Hello, thanks for the presentation. When you said about the lack of stability of the UI test potentially being a problem, what about CI? Do you have experience running this test on CI, and any particular CI provider that you use for that case?
We actually running them mostly on CI. I run the test locally when they started to fail, and I would like to take a closer look. Those error messages which we have seen during demonstration, they end up in Slack or Jenkins reports. So in most cases, it's even easy to see, it's obvious I missed some event, and to fix it there. And we haven't observed any issues, but I have to admit at some point when we started to use this technique, or we activated this few times again, we run test multiple times. If test fails, we try to run it again, and then third time. If it fails all 3 times, we consider that, it's crashing. It happens rarely, usually when iOS updates and brings us some surprises in terms of APIs. Or I had to admit we done this early because we decided to move in this direction, and obviously not all our tests were ready for this. And we got a lot of those issues with race conditions. And instead of stop of app development for a few months to fix them, we say, hey, we just would like to know that it generally works, and activated this 3 times running of the test. But then when we improved, we turned this off.
Thank you.
Okay, if you have more questions, just grab him later. And with that, give him a round of applause.